Thank you for laughing with us through the fun times and helping us through all the bad times and crazy times of high school. We all appreciate you and we cannot wait to see you.
An Arkansas teacher whose students praised in a video that later went viral has pled guilty to a federal sex crime. We're bringing back on Hillary Nappi, a lawyer who has litigated hundreds of cases on behalf of survivors of sexual abuse. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Well, that didn't take long. Another former teacher going to prison for sexually assaulting her students. 33-year-old Hare of Conway, Arkansas, married mother of one, by the way, entered a plea in federal court to admitting to transporting a minor across state lines for the purpose of unlawful sexual activity. Her sentencing date has not been set yet, but she faces between 10 years and life in prison. Now, there's a chance that you may recognize her. Why do I say that? Well, Hare, she taught family consumer science classes at Bryant High School in Bryant, Arkansas, but she was featured on Good Morning America after a video her students made for her went viral in 2020.
Hey, Miss Hare, I just want to say thank you so much for teaching me this year. I had so much fun. I'm going to miss all the laughs we had in the class and all your wows and all of the TikTok dances we tried to teach you.
Yeah, you see, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, there were schools in Arkansas that went virtual, but only core classes continued. So some of the students put together this video for Hare, and the sweet moment made national headlines. But it wasn't all so great because federal prosecutors say it's what happened in 2021 and 2022 that would be Hare's downfall. An investigation revealed that Hare met the minor victim on his first day of senior year. She began one-on-one counseling sessions with him, eventually giving her phone number as well as Instagram and Snapchat usernames. Investigators say that Hare later told the victim that she had a dream that the two of them were having sex. So she actually gave him her address. Hare admitted that she and the victim engaged in sex acts 20 to 30 times. She says that the assaults happened at her home, her car, classroom, parking lots at the high school. Then in April of 2022, Hare was the chaperone for a field trip to Washington, D.C. 4 students were on the trip, 3 females, 1 male. That male was the one that she had been having sex with. And they apparently had sex on the trip, which is where the transporting a minor across state lines part comes into that charge. Now, in a statement, Jonathan Ross, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Arkansas, he said, quote, "This former teacher took advantage of her position of trust and the vulnerability of a minor, using her role to entice and lure this minor into engaging in unlawful sexual activity. Our office will continue to seek significant penalties against any educational professional who sexually abuse their students." Now, Hare was indicted in federal court back in August of 2023. She entered her guilty plea this week. But when she was indicted in August, she wasn't only hit with the transportation of a minor charge, but also 1 count of interstate/foreign travel for prostitution/sexual activity by coercion. But it seems in exchange for her guilty plea, that remaining charge was dismissed. Let me bring back on Hillary Nappi, a lawyer who has litigated, unfortunately, hundreds of cases on behalf of survivors of sexual abuse. Hillary, good to see you. I didn't think I would see you back this soon, but I mean, again, I'm happy to see you, but what do you think about this?
Well, thanks for having me again. I'm sorry that it's so soon. I think Hare's case is the highlight of so many of the same things that we see in all of these cases. She is a popular teacher. If she wasn't a popular teacher, then her students wouldn't have made her a video. Predators use that. They use their skills to build trust within their community. They use their skills to earn the trust of minors, and particularly vulnerable minors, right? They will look for the students that have a variety of problems at home to single them out and then focus their attention and build their trust. And some of the things that you highlighted already, right? One-on-one tutoring, one-on-one attention, mentorship, right? These are things that we actually want our teachers to do. And we're usually as a community thrilled when we see that kind of outreach. But I think it highlights the need for proper training, right? From school districts and, for other adults and even sometimes children to recognize the signs of when that mentorship and that attention and that extra that we get from teachers becomes too much and is inappropriate. I think Hare was having sex with the student on the premises of the school, right, in her car and in other areas, it seems like.
Parking lots, yeah. 20 to 30 times. That's so blatant. And the sex on the field trip?
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, right? Where were the other adults? I am sure that if she took planned a field trip, right? I've had cases where the abuser is a teacher, plans a trip for, 30 or 40 kids. There are other chaperones that attend. It is not just that teacher. But of course, the intent of that teacher is to get time alone with that one student, or sometimes in other cases, multiple students that, they're abusing at the same time. The idea is to isolate that child from their peers, their parents, and have that opportunity. So, where are the other teachers? Where are the training procedures, right? I mean, certainly when we're talking about junior high and high school children, they're learning about sex, right? I mean, when you're talking about a child who's very young, they don't have context for what is happening. They don't understand it. But when you're at this age, right, we know the teachers are walking into a room full of hormones. That's life. We need to be doing a better job. And parents need to be more involved in watching for these things. And, sometimes I think, just like with doctors or priests, these are people who we as a society put in positions of trust to be with our children. And we give them a role and we teach our children, you're going to school. This is your teacher. Your teacher's there to, open new doors for you and teach you new things. And you're safe there. And these children aren't.
I find it also equally as fascinating that so many of the people that we're covering, they're married. They have these lives. They have children. She was married, young daughter, gave this minor her home address. Have you seen anything about that where, again, it's these people who were living otherwise normal lives engaged in this kind of sexual abuse and inviting it into their home, inviting it to their car, inviting it to their space with their family. I just find that to be equally as disturbing.
Yeah, it is. And unfortunately, it's common. I'm thinking as you're talking, three cases off the top of my head that I've litigated where a student was invited to a family dinner because that student had been, the prize of the school newspaper. And his abuser was the person who ran the newspaper. And so he was a familiar face with, the teacher was a familiar face with the student's family, and the student was a familiar face with the teacher's family. I have another case where my clients were friends with the the teacher's children. They were all students in the same school. So
Mhm.
that teacher was not only, an authority figure within that building, but he was also a parent.
Yeah.
So, I think it's really common. I think that pedophiles will use whatever tools they have available to them to have access to children. And I think that these cases are highlighting the fact that it really is an equal opportunity crime.
Yeah.
Women are doing this just as much as men. And, I'm actually happy to see that we're having more of a conversation about it because I think that there are social stigmas around males reporting or acknowledging the fact that they're uncomfortable in sexual situations at that age. We as a society, right, promote young boys having sex at that age. It makes them quote unquote a man, right? And some of the comments on some of these podcasts, it's like high five that kid, right?
Yep.
But we don't view a young girl if she's in that position and if it's a male abuser. And one of the comments I saw on something else was like, what about female on female abuse? I have had those cases, and it has been female teachers with female students, and the MO, so to speak, is the same, right? Build trust, isolate, and then push the boundary until the child keeps complying with whatever that adult's agenda is.
A lot of legal issues at stake here in this case. I think that's pretty clear. But when you think about it, there's also a lot of legal issues that come up in personal injury cases. You might not think about it, but if you get hurt, not only is it scary, but it can be really complicated. That is where Morgan and Morgan, a proud sponsor of ours here on Sidebar, comes in. I say that because Morgan and Morgan has completely modernized and streamlined the process for their clients. You can submit a claim and communicate with your legal team all from your smartphone. That's it. And the thing, too, about the personal injury process is that insurance companies, they often lowball clients' claims, but Morgan & Morgan is all about fighting for the money that you deserve. I mean, in the past couple of months, Morgan & Morgan saw verdicts of $12 million in Florida, $26 million in Philadelphia, and $6.8 million in New York. Mind you, this is considerably higher than the highest insurance offer for these accidents. And by the way, there's no upfront fee with Morgan & Morgan. It's absolutely free unless you win. So to start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan, go to forthepeople.com/LC sidebar or click the link in the description and pinned in the comments. We believe that she was arrested initially because a student came forward to report this abuse. I believe the Arkansas Democrat Gazette reported that it was a 17-year-old. And she initially surrendered to, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, to the Saline County authorities and on a charge of first-degree sexual assault. This is according to a Twitter post by the Bryant Police Department. So again, that's an example of, and we've talked about it so much, the bravery of these people coming forward, these minors coming forward, these victims, because that's really what it is. And we have to make that clear. And you made it perfectly clear that they are victims. I do want to talk to you a little bit about the law, though, on this.
Sure.
So she broke down in court. This is what the reporting is. Hare broke down in court. She was asked if everything the prosecutor said was 100% accurate. She replied to the court, "Yes, sir," and she pled guilty. And my thought was, because we are seeing these cases where people are pleading guilty or they're initially charged, is it incredibly difficult to defend yourself from these charges?
Oh, I think so. And I think that from the defendant perspective, the enticement is leniency in a sentence, right? Jails and prisons are not nice places for sexual offenders. And everyone knows that, right? And, if you are pleading guilty to one of these crimes and there's a set off, right? Because a district attorney's office or, a assistant U.S. attorney might be making a promise, keeping that child in mind. A plea of guilty prevents that child from having to testify. And if
Correct.
there are other children who are witnesses and, other teachers, sometimes that is a motivating factor to try to help heal the community, depending on how many people would be implicated. So, from a legal perspective, it's a trade-off. And I think defendants make decisions based on promises.
Well, I guess my question is, have you seen a successful case where somebody is hit with these kind of charges, successful in the sense for the defendant, where they actually took it to trial and maybe they tried to say that the minor victim who maybe testified wasn't credible, maybe there wasn't documentary evidence? I mean, how have you seen cases where people who have been charged with these crimes, teachers, educators, school staff charged with sexual crimes related to minors, that they were able to get an acquittal?
Yeah. I think it's about the sufficiency of the investigation and the evidence that's gathered. So I'm thinking of a case when I was a criminal defense attorney. It was not my client, it was a colleague's client. Um, I don't remember right now the age of the student, but I want to say it was high school age. And a friend came forward and reported it. It was a male teacher. He was arrested. Intense questioning, but there were not Snapchats. There were not text messages. Apparently, they had been just communicating through, like in person
Right.
talking. Right. There were no records of these communications, so everything was happening in the building. And to my recollection, they tried the case, and the defense attorney in that case kind of beat up the 16-year-old girl. And she was inconsistent with some of her story, and the jury bought it. And I think that there's a lot that goes into a jury's perspective, right? We're all humans, and we all make snap decisions based on what we see and what we hear, and we weigh what gets presented to us. And a good attorney is going to preclude certain things, right? And so when I was a defense attorney, I had a good relationship with law enforcement, and I would say to them all the time, when you do your job really well, you make my job very hard.
Yeah.
Because I can't have things precluded. I can't have pretrial hearings to say, your identification was wrong or you didn't follow a protocol. So, that's not fair to my client and his due process rights or her due process rights are being violated here. So it's all really about law enforcement. And, in my experience, particularly with crimes involving minors, the technology has increased for law enforcement. They are well trained. They know what they're looking for, and they want to, secure convictions in these cases. There's also, I think, for some pedophiles a sense of remorse. They don't want to keep doing this, but it is a compulsion. And so when presented with the option to spare their victim, right, having to testify, they take a plea.
Yeah.
It benefits them in other ways, right? So, I mean, I can't speak to everyone, but I've seen both.
And let's end it on this in terms of the prison sentence. So my understanding is that Hare is trying to get 13 years in prison for that federal charge she pled guilty to, but the judge has refused to say whether the court will accept the deal. Any reason the judge would reject it and potentially sentence her in any way. And if he rejects the deal, then it rejects basically her guilty plea. But as far as I know, what can we expect from her sentence, and any reason the judge would reject it? Do you think she could get life in prison?
I mean, certainly she can under the law, right? Look, judges are impartial, but they are also there to weigh the equities of sending a message. In our country, one of the goals of, the criminal justice system is to punish. It's not, I think in theory, it's supposed to be some sort of rehabilitation, but it's not. And if this particular judge has seen in, the applications for certain warrants or in submissions to the court that might not be public in other ways, memos, and certainly from conferences and conversations with the attorneys on this case, if the evidence is overwhelming and she's admitted it, what are the grounds really? What's the basis for the judge giving leniency here? Particularly, if this judge has insight to how this has impacted the children that she's abused. I mean, 30 times on the premises of a school, that's significant.
20 or 30 times over a course of different places, but including school
Right.
property. And yeah, it's horrifying to say the least. Listen, I wish that I'll always enjoy talking to you. I want you to know that. And I always enjoy our conversations. And I think we all learn a lot about, unfortunately, what these crimes are and the perspective of it and the legal aspects of it. But I hope I don't see you soon, because that means that we're dealing with another one of these cases. But hopefully, Hillary, I can get you on to talk about something else. But unfortunately, it's just we're seeing so much of this happen, and it's really disturbing to see. But it also suggests that more people feel comfortable coming forward. And maybe it's easier to track what people do. I'll give you the final word on that, Hillary Nappi.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that there is any uptick in the sexual abuse of children. I think we are just a different society, and we are finally talking about things that have plagued us for decades. So thank you for acknowledging that, because a lot of people don't.
Hillary Nappi, thanks so much. Great seeing you.
Thanks so much, Jesse. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.